Thank you
How are
for
you?
being...
Thank you very much.
We're well, as we are concerned, as I am sure you are, about the situation in Ukraine right now. What is your perspective?
Well, we're extremely concerned, of course, because we need a stable and prosperous Ukraine. Well, first of all, we think that this attempt to execute a violent coup should stop. Attacks on administrative buildings, apparent preparation for the storming of the parliament, those things should stop. And as President Yanukovych has proposed, they should continue their dialogue, and I understand that it is continuing.
If there is a dialogue continuing now, what went wrong? President Yanukovych announced that he was going to unilaterally declare a ceasefire, and yet gunshots rang out. What is your understanding of events on the ground?
I think what went wrong is that the opposition didn't really want a dialogue, didn't want to settle the situation within a constitutional framework. They wanted to take power by force. And it is a democratically elected president which has a majority in a democratically elected parliament. And in fact, a new presidential election is supposed to take place in 2015, 1 year from now. So instead of going through the political process, the opposition, the so-called democratic opposition leaders, decided to try to go to power, to take power on the shoulders of radical thugs who have been terrorizing the downtown Kyiv for the past 3 months. That needs to stop. And then a normal political process can continue. And of course, we hope that the Ukrainians among themselves will reach agreement which will make it possible to end this crisis.
Do you think that these protesters are terrorists?
No, they are clearly radicals. They are fascist-inspired. Some of them are clearly, from the slogans we see in the streets and from we know about those organizations, they are fascist-inspired radicals. Of course, there is a large segment of opposition feeling and protest among Ukrainian population, but unfortunately it has been taken over in the past months by those radical thugs who have been throwing Molotov cocktails and rocks at police and taking over administrative buildings and creating an impossible situation for the citizens of Kiev to live in and destabilizing Ukraine. You know, one thing you need to understand, if those so-called democratic opposition leaders were to succeed in coming to power on the shoulders of those radical thugs, that will not produce democracy in Ukraine. It would produce deeply chaotic and split Ukraine, and in fact, those radical sentiments would infect Europe as well, which also has this phenomenon of radicalism in its political life. So we are facing a very dangerous situation. I hope the Europeans and the Americans, the officials who are dealing with this situation, understand what they're doing. I'm afraid they don't, because I don't think their actions reflect an understanding of the destabilizing impact of their policy of encouraging the violent opposition to go for a grab of power in Kiev.
What would be your, look, I think, Mr. Ambassador, when we look at this, the Europeans have little input with Mr. Yanukovych and his government. You, as the Russian ambassador, have very little power that you could use to discourage or to advise the people who are out in the streets. But what can you say to the government? What do you say to the government now about pulling back?
We are not giving any recommendation about pulling back. I was really amused to read 2 days ago Vice President Biden talking to President Yanukovych, and according to the press release, recommending to him to pull government forces back. I'm wondering if Vice President Biden would be giving the same advice to President Obama if armed thugs were storming administrative buildings in Washington, D.C. and were preparing to storm the White House and the Capitol. Well, one must realize what is going on there. We are not giving any specific recommendations to anybody, except in Ukraine, except that they should stay within the constitutional framework. And the Europeans, in fact, they are there. Even now, President Yanukovych is meeting with some European foreign ministers. They should stop putting pressure only on the government, and they should criticize and, say that they disapprove and they don't accept the undemocratic attempt to carry out a violent coup in a European country, which they want to follow democratic European principles. What kind of European values are those? How, I mean, are they going to deal with such kind of a situation this way in Paris or any other European capital? So it's a very dangerous situation.
Mr. Churkin, there are some who would say that the reason that we already see the chaos on the streets. You talk about chaos and divisions in a country. We already see that today in Ukraine. And the reason some believe is the way that the government has handled things. Listen to what a doctor had to say about some of the casualties that she has seen there in Kiev. It'll only take a moment.
Right now, we have 13 people killed to death. They were shot by very professional snipers, and they didn't give any chance to doctors for us to save life of those people. All those people who were shot, killed for death by guns, professional guns with metal bullets, they were shot directly to their heart, to their brain, and to their neck.
All right, she's saying the use of deadly force by qualified snipers, and she's judging that on the way that the rounds struck their victims, killing them instantly.
Well,
what would you advise the government now?
Reportedly 20 policemen were killed today by snipers, and I saw TV footage, snipers shooting from a hotel they took over in downtown Kiev, and of course it's not the government troops or forces who took over that hotel. Clearly, those are opposition people. So the violence against the authorities, I mean, the police there, the authorities, have been taking unprecedented abuse, unimaginable in the United States or in Europe. Can you imagine the police standing under Molotov cocktails, being lit up by hoodlums for months and tolerating all this? How long would the life expectancy of such a person throwing a Molotov cocktail at a policeman be in New York City or in Atlanta or wherever you are in the United States? That
Ambassador
is
Churkin,
life expectancy. Yeah.
Ambassador Churkin, I understand that President Putin has dispatched an envoy to Kiev. Do you have any knowledge of that?
No, I'm not aware of that. I mean, I would, that there may be misinterpretation. Our deputy foreign minister was in Kiev on regular consultations with his Ukrainian colleagues. He is now back in Moscow, but I haven't heard about any special envoy. Our standard line, which we have been maintaining, that the only thing we need is Ukraine to be stable and for it to go through a political process, which President Yanukovych has always, I mean, he has offered the post of prime minister to one of the opposition politicians, and he rejected that. Why didn't he do that? If he wanted to conclude this association agreement with the European Union, he could do that and also take the responsibility for the consequences, because the consequences could have been quite dramatic in terms of economic impact on Ukraine. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to go all the way to take political power and democratically on the shoulders of those radical thugs. And this is not a democratic mode of behavior. And it's high time the United States and the European Union act on principle, but not out of some geopolitical ambitions they may be having, with detrimental effect to Ukraine and to the stability of Eastern Europe.
Some Ukrainian athletes have now left the Olympic Village in Sochi to return home. Do you think that the games, the Olympic Games, and what it means to Russia are being leveraged by the opposition on the streets of Kiev?
No, I don't see any connection at all. The games are a great success, and athletes are leaving now Sochi because the games are coming to an end. But overall, I think it has been a very successful celebration of sport, and I hope it will continue this way through the weekend.
Ambassador Churkin, I want to thank you very much for joining us and discussing this very important issue. We share your concerns with it all. We'll continue to monitor it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.